Sudip, here's the first question. What does courageous and ethical action mean to you as a society leader when the aim is gender and racial equity, diversity, and inclusion?
Thanks, Jamie. First, let me just say thank you for inviting me to participate. Um, when I think of courageous and ethical action, esse quam videre. I don't absolutely know Latin at all, but to be rather than to seem. I think we're living in one of those moments right now where it's not a time for stewardship; it's a time for leadership. And what that means is taking some of these concrete steps that sometimes do require courage and do require action and go well beyond words.
That actually leads me to the next question, which is whether you've actually, in sort of figuring out what courageous action to take, have you leveraged, of which there's so many to choose, have you leveraged data and metrics to make decisions and allocate resources to drive that climate and culture change?
In 2020, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, like many organizations, we put out a statement. Again, that doesn't require much courage, but it was something that was important to do. The second thing that we did was we said we need to look in the mirror. And we asked the entire scientific enterprise to do so, but we needed to do it for ourselves. And what do I mean by looking in the mirror? We didn't have disaggregated data on our own gender demographics, our own racial and ethnic demographics. And so the first thing that we did was say that we were going to look at every program, every product, every activity, every publication, and provide and gather our demographic data in a disaggregated way and make it available transparently on the internet. And in doing that, we needed to get a baseline. We needed to get a baseline of where we actually stood when it came to racial and ethnic and gender equity. And we did this not just in the parts of the organization that were easy to do, our employees, et cetera. We decided that, the AAAS we're a career enabling organization. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you publish in the journal Science, you are well on your way to becoming a scientist. When you win an award from the AAAS or from Science, you are establishing credibility and legitimacy in academia and in the scientific enterprise. When you win a AAAS S&T Policy Fellowship, you are making that pivot from science into policy. And so we are a career enabling organization. And so the actions that we take ripple across the scientific enterprise, as do many scientific societies who set the norms. And so in gathering this demographic data, we were able to see how we were doing in terms of members, our membership. What does that look like? What do reviewers at Science look like? What do our editors at Science look like? Our professional editors and our academic editors. What do the selection committees that choose awards look like? And in doing this, in looking at disaggregated data, there were times when we were proud of what we saw in the data, and there were times we were ashamed. And being transparent about that, putting it all out there publicly, had an effect. The effect is that it's a way for us to hold ourselves accountable. And so in doing this year after year after year, we are held accountable by the scientific enterprise that can look at that data and point out where the very glaring and obvious shortcomings are. It also drove our resources. For example, in our journalism, we have a news service that runs out of Science. Diversifying the editors and the freelancers that write for the journal Science was important to us, and so we allocated resources to that. We then couple that with survey data that we've also initiated. So we in the organization for our staff, our staff of approximately 500 people, we had a DEI survey to find out what it was that folks found as gaps, what was the culture of the organization, and that provided a lot. It told you about differences across parts of the organization. It told you where there were gaps, where our team members felt like they needed professional development to help them navigate the world as it is, as opposed to the world that they wish it were.
That really brings me to another question, whether you've taken on one of the biggest challenges, which is really driving change in how merit is defined.
First of all, I will say it is hard. And so I don't think that we should make it seem like there are easy answers here. But I do think that as societies, particularly as societies, we provide credibility and legitimacy to work, to scientific work, to scientific outcomes. And what do I mean by that? Well, by the choices, the editorial choices that we make in our publications, by the choices that we make in how we award our recognition. This affects the next step, which is in the academic world, what people can put on their CVs, and then gets them into tenure track positions and so forth. So we have this ripple effect that we as societies can really make big changes, despite the fact that we're not the major employer in academia. We're not the major employer in industry. And so, examples of this are that in our awards process, making sure that, first of all, our selection committees reflect the scientific enterprise and the United States. And it's not a matter of this is hard to do. There are scientists, there is talent out there that can populate these selection committees. And so the second thing that we've done is we've made sure that we've raised the issue of looking at excellence in its broadest definition. We've raised that with these selection committees to make sure that they are thinking about it as they go into their processes of making selections. And then the last thing is giving examples, writing about this. We have incredible platforms as societies. We have platforms that almost everyone in our disciplines read or take advantage of. And so when I talk about scientific excellence, when I talk about two of the things that I think are some of the most exciting advances of the last couple of years, I think about the helicopter on Mars, and I look at that engineering team. And if you want to see that diverse teams have great achievements, look at that team. If you want to see another team that's an incredible scientific achievement, look at the mRNA vaccine coming from Moderna. There you would see a team that is made up of white Americans, Black Americans, men, women, immigrants, people who work in business and industry and in academia. And it took all of those people and the diversity of thought and the diversity of experience to get that product to market so quickly. And I can go on and on. These examples are not exceptions, they are the rule. They are the rule. These teams that have diversity of thought and experience are the ones that create the most innovation. And we have to tell those stories, and that's part of what we do as societies.